if you take a look at your badge and the agenda, you might see that there should be something about Zabbix. Well, actually, it's not going to be about Zabbix at all. We're going to talk about diversity. Surprise, surprise. And so I should stand somewhere here. Okay. So all of the industries that we have, they have a different characteristic, different culture. And for IT, I think it's a mix of a bit of a gig culture, a bit of rationality, this kind of a down-to-earth approach, but also, like a lot of from Linus Torvalds once said, that talk is cheap and show me the code. And recently, there's been some question asked about, is our industry diverse enough? And those questions and the action that followed made some people nervous. And we would like to talk about whether diversity is an issue, and if it is, what could we do about it? So my name is Adam, and I'm a team manager at Allegro. And for the most of my life, I've been doing technical talks, like low-level JVM talks. It's not like DevOps, but more like software engineering. And anyway, I'm here to talk about something totally different, about soft skills thing.
Yeah, I am Asia. I work together with Adam and with other managers. We try to create the best working place possible for Allegro employees.
And Asia is our HR VP.
Yes, I am HR business partner. Yeah.
Yep. So we both work at Allegro, and it's not only a place where we can play and achieve some business goals with cool tech, but it's also a place we want to, just as Asia said, give space for people to develop and grow. And it actually turned out that we share a common interest with Asia.
Yeah, we talked a bit about diversity and other issues, and we found out that we have both common interest. We are interested in the mechanism hidden behind our everyday actions, our decisions, and how those mechanisms influence us, our society, our workplace. And we think that diversity as a topic fits very well into this subject.
Okay, and so before we start, what is a non-zero sum game? What did we decide to name the talk this way? So in game theory, generally you have two types of games. One of them is a zero-sum game in which, in order for somebody to win, somebody else has to lose. So it's a zero-sum game. You have some shared resources, and you just have to somehow split them, probably not equally. On the other hand, the non-zero-sum game is a game in which you gain more when you cooperate than if you play against each other. So it's a win-win situation for both parties or multiple parties involved in the game. Before we start, there's a question for you. How much do you think are you aware of what drives your decisions and your actions in your everyday life? And in order to dwell a bit on this question, I have two tasks for you. First of them is answer this simple question. 2 + 2 = 4, and you probably didn't have much problems with answering. You probably didn't even notice when did the answer pop in your head. You just knew it. It was there. But if I asked you this question, or this equation, to solve, since we're all engineers, most of us probably are engineers here in this place, you might have some intuitions, or you probably remember something from high school or studies, how to solve this, but it's not so easy to access, and you probably have to focus and think about it. So it's as if there were like those two different entities in our head, like two personas. One of them just knows the answer and says, it's 4, no problem. While the other, it takes time to power up. And of course, there are no two personas, it's just us and our brain. And if you think that I'm talking about some obvious things, well, people did get Nobel Prizes for researching those obvious things. And those people were Daniel Kahneman and Aaron Tversky, and they got a Nobel Prize in economics for researching how do we achieve the decisions, how do we come to the decisions that we make, and what influences them. And so they dubbed those two different styles of thinking as System 1 and System 2. System 1 is the quick one. It's very efficient. It's kind of a cache maybe. And it's also a power save mode. So when you just want to reach to it, it knows all the answers immediately. On the other hand, System 2 is a bit slower. It's also more expensive to use. So you need time and energy to actually power it up. And since System 1 is a power save mode, no wonder that most of our actions and decisions in everyday life is based on how System 1 works. So if you just close the door behind you in your apartment, you probably don't even remember that you actually used the key. It happened. And so how System 1 and 2 affects our decision making and our actions.
Yeah. So as Adam said, System 1 has its benefits. It's fast because it's based on mental schemes and heuristics. So basically, it's called shortcut thinking, so it helps us make decisions. So for example, when you meet a new person, you don't analyze hours of its nature, combining different facts. It probably takes you a few minutes or a few seconds to incorporate this person into one of your schemas. So you probably think, oh, she is similar to my friend. So schemas help us limit the complexity of information we get every day and decide on one. However, on the other side, schemas and System 1 is also responsible for creating stereotypes. And while they are good for us every day, they help us make the decisions, they also can be hurtful for others. And this is one of the biggest downsides of System 1.
Yeah, so we have a short story for all of you to read, and think of the first answer that comes to your head. Just try to grasp it. And so it is. A father and a son are in a horrible car crash that kills the father. The son is rushed to the hospital. As he's about to be operated, the surgeon says, "I can't operate. That boy is my son."
Yeah, so the question is, what first comes to your mind? Adam, what first came to your mind when you read that story?
Yeah, so when I first read the story, my answer was, it's impossible, because the father died in the car crash. So he cannot be the doctor, he cannot say this.
Yeah, so there is a high chance that if we ask each one of you about the first answer that pop up in your head, probably some of you would say the same as Adam. And the research shows that people usually, when they read the story, they think that surgeon is a man, so therefore he is a father, and he is dead, so that's not possible. They don't think, the first thought is not surgeon is a woman, and so she's a mother of this child.
Yeah, so in our society, in our culture, we somehow establish this connection between, a doctor is a man, and this is the first thing that comes to our mind unconsciously. I didn't even think about it, it was just there. And if you thought that we had feedback that this example might be a bit worrying for people, car crash and death. So there's an alpaca for you just to, chill out, reset. And yeah, let's get moving.
Yeah.
So here's a story that I had about me. It happened to me like a week ago. So I'm studying, and when I was in the classroom, professor came and he was, looking smart in glasses, and I thought it might be a good lecture for me. But only after 1 or 2 minutes, I caught this thought flowing from my brain. I observed it, that I noticed that this guy talks and moves like the person I don't like one person that I really don't like. And only after this thought came to my brain, I was ready to give an opinion about this lecture. I had this thought that it's not gonna be good, and I was even ready to share this opinion with others around. So thankfully, I observed this thought, and I was able to catch it in the midair when it passed through my brain and actually neutralize it. But if I didn't, I would be judging the person simply on the first 2 minutes of a lecture, and it has nothing to do with the merit of it.
Yeah. So just for today, we ask you to question your own reasoning for the sake of this presentation, at least. Switch to slow mindset and analyze different facts and points of view that we will be showing you, just to make more informed decision.
So, a story about an orchestra.
Yeah. For today, we will have a few stories for you, just to show you, just to visualize some ideas that we have. And the first story is about a history of an orchestra. So imagine that you are auditioning for an orchestra. You come into a room, you sit down, in front of you there is recruitment committee. You start playing and they listen to your music. And this is how it looked like in 1970s, when the directors of orchestra were sure that they only focus on the quality of the music, nothing else. So you can imagine how surprised they were when a group of researchers proposed them to introduce a blind auditions. So in blind auditions, candidates were behind curtains, so the directors could not see them, the recruitment committee. And you can think, if nothing else influenced the decision, so just the quality of the music was important, it doesn't matter whether this is a standard audition or a blind audition, the results should be the same. And this research showed something a bit different. So the blind audition, the results of the blind audition was that the women, the blind audition increased number of women in the orchestras by 40%. And what is very interesting here is that directors or the recruitment committees were sure that they only focus on the quality of the music, not musician appearances. So this example shows how sometimes we are, our biases are unconscious, we are not aware of them, and we are not aware of what drives all of our decisions every day.
Yeah, so there's this saying that fake it till you make it, and it would seem like probably not a very good career advice for people, but some research shows that it actually might work.
Yeah, so there's another theory, and it's also research on this theory done. University of Melbourne found a strong correlation between self-confidence and workplace success. So they conducted 100 interviews among people, corporate professionals, so people working in big corporations around US, and they asked them about their self-confidence levels during primary, high school, university days. And they asked them about their professional life at the moment. And they found out that people who had a high self-level confidence during those school years were earning better wages, like higher wages, and they were also promoted more quickly. And there is another experiment also done by Amy Cuddy, and she found out that people who increased their self-confidence level just before interviews were assessed better than people who didn't.
Yeah, so it's all the making of System 1, so this shortcut thinking. And if we become aware of System 1, if we are able to notice its doing with the decisions that matter, we can try to minimize those unconscious biases and their impact on our decisions. And if we minimize the effects of those biases, we might be able to create a better workplace for everyone, because none of us would like to be judged based on self-confidence level on a given day, or maybe our appearance or anything else. So what does it all have to do with diversity? Well, the self-confidence example is really important, because if fake it till you make it really works, and it really has an impact on how we hire people, well, it so happens that statistically, women and men tend to view their accomplishments in a bit different light. So this research applies to women and also the national minorities. And what it shows is that when asked, do you feel like you're meeting the high standards that you set for yourself? Meaning, like, are you personally satisfied of the quality of job that you're doing? It's not external assessment, it's internal assessment. So women tend to actually respond negatively more often. So at work, it's like 38% of women said that they do not meet the high standards that they set for themselves, compared to 25% of men. And similarly at home. And so...
Yeah, so we've got a question for you to think about. Would you apply for a job even if you don't meet all the criteria, or you just meet some of the criteria? And also there is a research done by Hewlett-Packard on that, and they found out that women need to feel that they can fulfill 100% of the criteria in order to apply, where men will apply when they feel that they meet around 60% of the criteria.
And of course, it would be really cool to know, or really useful to know, why is it so. And so they did also a deep dive study, which followed up on those things. And the first top 3 reasons, so let's say you did not apply for a position. The question is why? And when they asked those questions to 2 different people, and then they made 2 groups, men and women. And the first reason was the same. So I felt like I didn't want to waste my time because I didn't meet all the criteria. So it's a fruitless endeavor. However, the next two reasons are much more interesting. So for women, 21% of them didn't want to fail in front of a committee. So they didn't want to go to the job interview and fail and be seen as fail. And the last one, 15% of women felt like what's written in the job description, in the job ad, is exactly what they need. Like, there is no room for negotiations. This is what we need, and since I don't meet this criteria, I'm not going to apply.
Yeah. So it looks like women don't believe or take into consideration that their potential to learn is also very important during interview, and they don't need to know absolutely everything to apply for a job.
Well, if only women were a bit more self-confident. Maybe.
That could be a very easy solution. So they need just to be more self-confident, and it will be okay. And again, research shows something a bit different over here. So there are some challenges with this theory. So there is an experiment done by Harvard University. They gathered a group of students, and they gave them a story, the same stories about workplace life or successful workplace life of men and a woman. And they asked those students, in the end, when they read the stories, to describe these people, this men and women, in a few words. And while a man was described as self-confident and he knows what he wants to do in his life person, woman was described as a cold bitch. So this shows that self-confident women, especially in male-dominated roles, might be perceived negatively.
So since we don't want to be judged based on some whims or self-confidence or anything, we would like to be judged based on our merit. And there is a tool for this. It's called Meritocracy. And the question is, if we just all used it, would the world become a better place? Is it really leveling the playing field? And the answer is, it's not so easy. So while meritocracy has a lot of, it has really good ideas, when implemented wrongly, it actually can do even more harm. And there's another study which showed that when around 450 managers were asked to assess employees based on some track records. So they got a file of papers, and inside those papers, it was like, all of your achievements from last year or something like this. And first of all, they were asked to do this kind of assessment. They didn't know those people personally. First of all, they were asked to do this assessment in one company. And so all those files were randomly given a name and a sex of a person. So either men or women. And this, after the first assessment, they created a baseline. So we know that group of those 450 managers should grade those people, should assess those people like this. And the assessment was about, giving promotions or terminations or giving rises. Okay, so we have a baseline. So now follows the other company. And the other company, once again, they took all the files, they added random generated sex to each of the file. And the only difference between those companies was that this company, in its value statement, it said that we value meritocracy, that all of our processes are based on meritocracy. And you would expect that statistically, the results should be more or less the same. You should not be able to see any differences. Well, what happened actually is that in the second company, the one which valued meritocracy so much, there were higher reward for men for the same performance. So women were, in general, graded on the lower level compared to men. Once again, those track records were with random sex and names. So, it was not like stories of real people. And why is it? So as I said, it's once again the orchestra. So people, good-willing people, they think that they're doing well, and they're just looking at the merit of other people when they assess them. But what happens is that the unconscious biases tend to creep in. And in this example, it was called the paradox of meritocracy. So while meritocracy in itself might be great, when not implemented properly, it does a lot of harm. And the paradox is that feeling that we owe everything to our hard work, to ourselves, makes us less incentivized to question our reasoning. So since we have meritocracy in our company, everything is just, and we stop questioning whether it really is, like what's inside our head when we make those decisions. And this is called the mind trap of overconfidence. So when Daniel Kahneman, the guy who came up with System 1 and 2, was asked, since you know so much about decision making, how our brains work, are you better at making those decisions? Are you better at detecting unconscious biases? Well, he said, actually, no, I'm not. Because even though, and might be even worse, because I think that I know so much, that I have all the factors in my head, that I stop paying attention to what I do. And then once again, System 1 creeps in. It's unconscious bias.
Yeah. And one of the places we are sure we make decisions based on merit is recruitment process. And as we mentioned before, during the recruitment process, self-confidence might be as important or sometimes maybe even more important than the competencies themselves. And this judgment that we make it very quickly. So studies show that researchers make their decisions after 4 minutes of 30-minute interview. So you may just ask, is this decision based on the competencies of this candidate, or is more based on their unconscious biases?
And so once again, if we just minimize the effect of those biases, we can create a better workplace for all of us. So it makes a lot of effort to just walk around every day and question all the decisions. Like, it's tiring. You have to power up System 2 all the time. And as I said, it's more time consuming and more energy consuming. So is it really worth the effort? Well, first of all, a personal story. So sharing experience with people who think differently, it makes us really better at our jobs. And I see it a lot in my teams because we have this kind of an internal tourism at Allegro, so we can just switch teams from time to time and work for a month or two in different environment. And in my teams, it's like 12 new people each year coming for a month or two from different teams and from different environments. And I see that they bring new languages, that they challenge the way we do things, that they challenge our routines, and that they, it makes us all a better people because we start thinking about the ways we did things, about optimizing the way we do things. But it's not also this. So your team is probably already pretty diverse because, long time ago we learned that having people with different kind of experiences in teams is actually beneficial. So we have like junior devs and mid and senior guys or girls, and it all works out. And those people probably worked in different environments before, like have different job experience, and you might be even cooperating with Scrum Master, product owners. So those teams are already quite diverse. But we can actually, strive to make it even more diverse environment by adding more dimensions to it. Dimensions like nationalities or sex and gender. And so during this presentation, during this talk, we're going to focus on the sex dimension, because in our society, in our culture, in our country, in our market, actually, IT market, this is the issue that we think we should, take a closer look at first.
Yep. It's proven that similar people work well together. So if you have your teams and they are probably a bit diverse, like Adam said, it's totally fine and they will work well together. What just research shows is that teams that are diverse, they have different dimensions to the diversity. When they deal with more complex tasks, they achieve better results. So in other words, the diversity of personalities together with the competency of the teams increase the performance of the team, especially when we deal with high complex tasks.
And in IT, we like to think that we don't do simple things, we deal with complex stuff all the time.
So few things why we think that diversity helps helps our workplaces and the companies. So the first thing that we found out is that diverse companies achieve better financial results. So there is research done by Boston Consulting Group. They did a study among 1,700 companies across 8 countries, various industries, and they found out that companies with diverse management management teams achieve, on average, 90% higher revenue. And why is that? The answer is simple, it's innovation. So the study found out that the diverse teams create better innovations, and this means that the companies improve their financial performance.
And it kind of makes sense, because when you have a problem and you put people with different backgrounds in the same room with different perspectives, what they tend to come out with is a solution which is actually more robust, and they just looked at it from different angles, and it might actually better fit the ever-changing markets.
Yeah, and we strongly believe that if we ignore diversity, we may miss a lot of opportunities. So Poland, at the moment, unfortunately, is at the end of work women's activity ranking. So at the moment in Poland, 64% of women work, where on average it is 66, and then Sweden is 80. And according to McKinsey Global Institute model, if we increase work activity of women, we will increase our GDP by 7% by 2025, which means we will add
A lot of zeros.
1.3 trillion zlotys to our budget.
Yeah, but it will not just happen by itself. So we have to put some effort to, help it happen or to make it happen. And there is this really interesting study which shows what happens when we actually, just leave it to itself. And so this is a study which shows how many men or women are studying on IT faculties in Poland. And the number of women on the IT faculties is growing. And in 2017, I guess, it was around 14%. And it's cool, it's nice. But what happens next is a bit worrying, because before they enter the job market, from 13% at the beginning, we actually go to only 3%. So only a quarter of women who started their studies actually enter the job market. For men, it's half of them. So in between, we don't know what happens in between, but something has to happen so that only a quarter of women who started the studies, meaning those are girls who were, self-confident enough, who had all the skills necessary to enroll the studies and probably even finish them, they don't really enter the job market, and so we don't see them on our, interviews and in our teams. So, question is, how can we start and do something about it, or what are the actions that we can take? Well, first of all, there's this bit of personal story from me. So I think I'm quite aware of those things I've been talking about, but it's just like with Daniel Kahneman. You can't really get better at it if you don't train yourself all the time. And what happened is I was talking with a colleague, with a girl at our company who I'd known for like a year. I just knew her. I didn't work with her, but I just knew her. And I didn't know what she was doing actually in her day-to-day job. And it was kind of embarrassing for me, because when I asked her, my question was, so what are you testing? Because for all my life, I saw developers, developers, guys, male developers, and testers, like female testers. So my first thought was, she has to be a tester, so I asked her, what is she testing? Well, it turned out she was a developer. And it was really embarrassing for me, because I was like, I'm sorry that I even assumed this. I mean, I shouldn't have, because why? Why did I do it? It was simple statistics going on in my brain, but based on some statistical data about the whole population, I made a judgment, some kind of a judgment or assumption about what she was doing in her life.
Yeah, and just to make sure, there is nothing wrong with testing. It's amazing, okay? As amazing as developing. Our point is that if you approach new person, just catch the thought in your brain whether you are assuming something, and try not to assume. Try to ask open question. What do you do? So the person can just feel a bit better, and she or he can describe you what are his everyday tasks.
Yeah, so practical thing. Not all women on conferences are from HR, and women in IT aren't all testers, UX, or product owners, something like this. And so
Yeah, we have also a few ideas what we do, but what we want you to what we want to encourage you to do. First thing is mentoring. There is again a lot of studies on the market showing that mentoring really helps to make our workplace more diverse. So we really ask you, encourage you to share your experiences and to help others, especially people who are just starting their careers or people who want to change the work they do. So they want to switch to different sector, to technology sector, to help them and to mentor and to share your knowledge with them. Yeah, that would be great.
Also, since System 1 is the one that rules us for most of the day, we cannot assume that everyone is going to be walking around questioning all the decisions that they make. Instead, we might improve the processes we have or create processes that make it harder for those unconscious biases to creep in. So especially when it comes to assessing people or hiring them. So it's like recruitment and interviews and performance evaluations. These are the processes which are highly vulnerable to unconscious biases, and we should actually improve them to make them not so.
Yeah, and again, I will make a small comment. It doesn't mean that we want to have now million of procedures, million of policies in the companies. We just want to make sure that the ones we have, the policies or the processes, the recruitment process we have, also takes into consideration diverse target groups that we have. So these are a few ideas. Some of them we also use in Allegro. So firstly, think about your job descriptions and whether they match different styles of thinking, and basically whether they target different types of group on the market, not people just similar to me, to myself.
Yeah, because you can shut down a whole lot of people on the market just by giving a too specific job description, maybe.
Yeah, interviews should have structure, and this is very important. So what does it mean that interviews should have structure? So if you have different candidates, they pretty much should go through similar recruitment process. So there should be similar questions, similar cases for which one of them. So then the process basically is fair.
And it's not like you have to come out with a printed piece of paper with all the questions written on it. It should still be a conversation, but just checking all the same areas for each candidate.
Yeah. Write down your feedback. This is something that we do at Allegro for sure. Before you go and speak about candidates to others, we write down the feedback. So we look at it and see whether these are only facts and competencies we are talking about, or whether it's bias, it's our, beliefs or chemistry we felt at the interview. So it's good to write it down and then talk about the candidates, just basing your ideas on facts and on the competencies.
So before a person is hired at Allegro, he or she usually talks with 5 different people. So we are sure that we have different perspectives and that we minimize the unconscious bias of just one single person.
Yeah, of course, if you hear 5 people, it just sounds like, whoa, it's a very long recruitment process. No, we try to make it short. So it's like 2 days. So one day it's more technical, other day it's more like talking with leader and HR. But still, we have like 5 people to see the candidate.
And remember, lack of self-confidence, it's not incompetence.
Yeah.
Just this sometimes happens.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that, being open to diversity, that we would be... By being open to diversity, it does not have to mean that we have unfair outcomes. So we would like to focus on the inputs into our processes, like, the recruitment is the best example here. So we want to reach people from diverse groups and from diverse segments of the market, but then they come and they actually are in the same process, and we strive to make this process as fair as possible. And if the process is fair and the input is diverse, we're going to get some great results, only based on merit. And so the key takeaways. So diversity will not just happen by itself. We have to take some action on the input level at least. And be aware of unconscious biases. So be aware what thoughts actually go through your brain and why did you make this or the other decision. Create processes, try to improve or create new processes that actually minimize the effects of unconscious biases in the companies.
Yeah, and we strongly believe that diverse environments means better workplace for everyone, for each one of you, and it's a non-zero sum game for us.
Okay, thank you. This is the research that we've used, and I don't know if you have questions, but
yeah, we have a couple of questions. I think we can see that this is probably important topic, and I hope you're not only here because they're supposed to be a different talk. So yeah, and that talk was, by the way, by Yulia Sycheva. So unfortunately, we lost one of the very few women doing talks here. All right, so a couple of questions. How many female DevOps engineers work in Allegro?
Great question. Yeah, too few. I mean, just to make sure that we are on the same page. It doesn't mean that we are extremely diverse in Allegro and we are just, like just to look at us and see how amazing it is. We know that we have a lot of work to do. So answering to this question, Mazak, do we have, I think at the moment, no, usually our female, our women in Allegro usually work as developers, as testers, and
product owners, UX.
Huh? Yeah, so in DevOps probably we don't have any.
We don't have the DevOps engineers. We have
yeah, that's the other thing.
data engineers, we've got engineers, but we don't have the DevOps engineers.
Yeah, so depending how you would count it, we have some in the department of Marcin. There are women working there, but it's not DevOps role because we don't have it.
No, yeah.
Okay. All right, the next one maybe. Do you know in which country data has been gathered for your comparison about applying for a job when you don't meet 100% requirements?
Yeah, it was a study made by Hewlett-Packard.
Yeah, it was USA.
USA, okay. And the last one?
And okay, so I will make a comment here, if I may. Again, like 90% of our studies are from USA, and we are aware of that. Some of them are from Europe, and the reason why we really looked hard for research done in Poland, but it's like very little done on these subjects in Poland. So,
Can I ask from which state in USA?
in which state? I don't have that detailed info. Which state?
I think it was general HP, like Hewlett-Packard for all the corporate.
Yeah.
Because the question is that I have spoken with many guys in IT, and for your comparison, 60% and I don't know, maybe 80% is not valid for Poland. Guys here in Poland also are hitting the mark 80 or 90%, meeting the requirements in the job description, not 60.
How do you know that?
Because I asked many guys from IT,
You asked.
showing them the job specification, and they told me that they do not meet 80%. I will not apply for it.
So it's your own research.
Yeah, my
Okay.
own personal research.
It's called unconscious bias.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
yeah, but I agree. It's different. Mm-hmm.
It might be different. It's hard for us to argue, basing on your research. But it's also hard to us to argue because it's not from Poland itself. So its statistics. It might differ from also from the industry to industry. But it's one of the general.
No, but I totally agree. It may different in Poland. Of course, it's different culture, different market, etc. The question for us was not to do this presentation at all because we cannot find the research, or let's try it. Let's start talking about it. Maybe this will also help to start doing the research more and more because the topic will get more popular among people.
We have one more, I think we'll ask it,
okay.
But that will be the last one. Inheriting and letting go around 12 people each year needs learning them. How do you deal with this challenge? Do any of them stay for good?
Can you repeat the beginning?
So, yeah, I'm also not sure if I understand. Inheriting and letting go around 12 people each year needs learning them. How do you deal with this challenge? Do any of them stay for good?
Like the team traveling.
Okay. The challenge of
It's like a short-term thing. So it's like 1 or 2 months for every person. So we call it tourism. Like it's internal touristics.
Yeah.
And it really, you're right. It's not like all of them are there at once. It's like one person per month or something like this. And it does really take like a week or 2 to get used to each other. That's why we don't do really short ones, short tourisms. But it's also like refreshing thing to just to see the process, like how people are learning each other and how they question what they did, like because it might not be the best way. I know we can talk about this during the break, but it works. Actually, it works.
Yeah, but just to answer it was your question. I'm not sure. Okay, somebody else. So we plan this as well. So it's not like, oh, I want to go for tourism. Can I go? And I want to go now. No, we usually plan it so leaders talk to each other and say, okay, right now I cannot because there's important deadline, whatever. But in 2 months, no problem. He can go for a month or 2 months, and then the leader knows about it. He can plan it, etc. Tell the team. So it needs a bit of planning.
Yeah, the longest one I had was half a year. The shortest one was like a month. So it works for us.
All right.
All right.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.